On New Year's Day, 1994, with ski mask and automatic rifles in hand, the Zapatista National Liberation Army, also known as the EZLN, descended from the hills of Mexico's impoverished Chiapas province and commenced a unique armed struggle. The EZLN is largely an indigenous peasant-based movement with some urban intellectual leadership, most notably Sub-Commander Marcos, who's the group's spokesperson. Democracy, freedom, and justice are the EZLN's three central objectives. The democracy they envision is consensus-based, direct, and participatory. Their goal of freedom is required to facilitate indigenous autonomy and self-determination.
Invita a no tener miedo, pero el miedo que paraliza. Ese es el miedo al que hay que temerle, ¿verdad? El terror te deja parado. En cambio, el miedo que te hace reflexionar y te hace caminar, porque sabes que es un paso, que es un medio por el que hay que ir para lograr algo mejor.
Zapatismo, both as a movement and as a set of ideas, breaks from the traditional revolutionary model that embraces the taking of power. Instead of adhering to this objective, the EZLN calls for a reconceptualization of power by constructing it from below, at the individual, family, community, and organizational level. Power, they say, begins with self-representation, and through the construction of local nuclei in which the most marginalized of society, especially women and indigenous people, create channels for their voices to be heard. As these nuclei solidify, power is redistributed from a vertical structure to a horizontal base, and the current institutions eventually shatter and are slowly replaced by local forces. Rather than allowing neoliberalism to dismember humanity, Zapatismo instead calls for the construction of spaces in which all members of humankind can participate and reclaim control over their own lives in order to create a world in which all worlds can fit. This construction of power focuses on the forever dead, that is to say, those sectors of society internally labeled the other, which in Mexico have historically been indigenous peoples and women. By building local forces based on self-representation, the Zapatistas hope to carve spaces for the voices of those who, up to this point, have been silenced, and to assure that these voices actively participate in constructing the future. By creating a force from below, Zapatismo breaks from a pattern that is advantageous to those who already have access to power. In revolutions focused on taking power, it is men, in this case, mezzo men, who are more likely to secure power and create new institutions so that the rest of society can benefit. In the case of Zapatismo, the objective of the revolution is realized through the revolutionary process, and therefore creates the space for Mexico's indigenous groups, women, and other marginalized sectors of society to define how that process evolves while at the same time empowering them. As has been the case in other revolutionary movements, women explored their rights while integrating themselves into the military ranks. Those women that held military positions came down from the mountains to work and raise consciousness among the civilian support base. The recruitment of women into the organization occurred in a number of ways and for various reasons. In some cases, it was through the family union, as this was the primary structure that allowed the EZLN support base to grow during the 1980s and the beginning of the 1990s. It was during the training in the mountains where women experienced, for the first time, a level of equality and where they explored their rights as women. Women now comprise over 1/3 of the EZLN military. In addition to participating in the military, women also form part of the Zapatista political leadership, both in the form of overseeing appointed responsibilities in the villages and as members of the Indigenous Clandestine Revolutionary Committee, the highest political body. Cultural events are something fairly new and part of most EZLN support-based committees, since it is a conscious strategy to maintain cultural practices while incorporating new traditions into their history. Local leadership attempts to recreate the history of the struggle and remain firmly rooted in their past by ensuring that traditions along with recently created pieces are integrated through cross-generation participation and through the voices of both genders.